Corey here. We're in the pits of Goodhue, root pit that is, and today's July 25th, and we're here to bring you Easy Insights update number 10. Now, of course, we've got a pit behind us, but we got to talk about above ground development first. So corn is just hitting about R1 right now. In the next week to 10 days, it's really one of the most important times of a corn plant's life. So as we hit R1, we have a couple things to think about. One is nitrogen. We've only used about 63 to 70% of our nitrogen needs we've taken up, and we've got about a third of our nitrogen demand left. Some of that's going to be remobilized from the stock and leaves, but the rest of it's going to come from uptake. As we're scouting fields right now, it's going to be really important to start looking for nitrogen deficient symptoms. Now this is a leaf from the lower part of the canopy, and as you can see, the nitrogen deficiency coming in from the V of the midrib and working its way to the center. So watch for nitrogen deficiency, and that's going to give you a grade on how well you were managing your nitrogen this year and what Mother Nature gave us to work with. As we move below ground, we talked about nitrogen. Let's talk about water. Right now, as of R1, corn plant's going to need about 0.3 of an inch of water per day per plant. That's going to decrease a little as we go through the reproductive phase. And right now, if you were under water stress, you probably lose about 8% of yield per day it was under stress. And as we get to R3, we'll move that number down to about 4% yield loss under stress. As we look at our corn roots today, I want you to keep in mind where roots take up water nutrients. In the top foot, it's about 40%. In the next foot, it's about 30%. In the third foot, it's about 20%. And you can see a few corn roots sitting down at the bottom fourth foot. That only accounts for about 10%. The name of the game in mobile nutrient management, like nitrate and sulfur, is keeping those nitrogen and sulfur in the root zone where the corn plant can take it up. The other thing to think about is as we hit R1, our net effective growth of roots are pretty much done. We might lose some roots, we might grow some root hairs, but the effective growth really is just about done. The last thing to check for when you're walking corn is for pollination. So just rip this open. Remember, every silk tube is attached to an ovule that will turn into a corn kernel. As I shake the silks out, we can see the ones that are still attached haven't pollinated yet. We've got some good moisture, we'll finish out pollination, but as corn has moved from vegetative to reproductive, we're going to be solely focused on filling these kernels. We'll switch it over to John and talk about how beans balance reproductive and vegetative phase at the same time.
All right, thanks Corey. I'm in the right-hand pit of Goodhue, the soybean pit that is, and right here I got a soybean. The first thing that I look at when I dig up that soybean root is I look for how straight it is. Here, this root, you can see that it goes at an angle. Definitely hit that seed trench, found its way down. It made its way. This root is big, it's somewhat healthy, but I definitely want to make sure that I got a nice straight taproot. So back in this pit behind me, you can see here I got an example of a nice straight taproot. It goes down to about that 2-foot mark. You can see I got some nodules definitely far down in the canopy. Corey talked about nitrogen uptake in corn. With soybeans, we know that's a little bit different. Some of the things I look at in nitrogen uptake in soybeans is I want to look at the nodules. So here I picked nodules that were right next to that big taproot, and what I do is I cut those nodules open and I look at their color. So when I look at that nodulation or that color, I want to see a nice deep dark red. When I got dark red nodules, I know that that soybean is actively fixing nitrogen, and that's a good thing for holding on to pods and retaining those flowers. The other thing that we want to focus on above ground on soybean is we want to look at the overall health of those leaves. We have to remember that each one of those racemes or those flowering nodes, particularly on this plant, is connected to a singular trifoliate. So if you take this trifoliate, follow it down, we know that this trifoliate directly feeds this cluster of nodes of flowers. And what you can see is we want to make sure that this trifoliate is as healthy as it can possibly get. Healthy for taking up photosynthesis, but also in nutrient management. So one of the things we can definitely do at this R2 to R3 timing in soybeans is apply a fungicide. That's going to keep our leaves healthy and make sure that our trifoliate is actively feeding those clusters of flowers. The other thing that I want you to do is make sure you're taking a tissue sample on a soybean. We are running into some manganese deficiencies. Manganese is very important for photosynthesis, and we want to make sure that that plant is also photosynthesizing as efficiently as possible. Lastly, is soybeans have a pretty good canopy this year. We're short, we're branchy. We need to penetrate those nutrients and that fungicide into the canopy. Using Masterlock is going to help us do that. So until next time, this is Easy Insights number 10. I'm John.
I'm Corey.
And we're in the pits of Good Hue.